Well, now for the latest on the story, we speak now to Alex Saieh, who is the head of humanitarian policy and advocacy at Save the Children. Alex, good evening from our side of the world anyway, and thank you so much for speaking to us. I mean, talk to us about, just from a global point of view, as Save the Children, the aid that you have been bringing into Gaza, and certainly what the latest developments have made for that aid reaching the most vulnerable.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's really important to mention that humanitarian aid must never be used as a bargaining chip or as a tool of warfare. And the use of starvation as a weapon of war is a war crime. So international law is very, very clear about that. We are extremely alarmed to hear of the reports that the government of Israel is once again blocking aid from entering the Gaza Strip. Every single person in Gaza, more than 2 million residents who are there, relies on humanitarian assistance just to survive. There are more than 1 million children in Gaza. And what this means is that children who were receiving malnutrition support will no longer be able to receive that. Children who were just starting to recover from 16 months of war will not be able to get the treatment they need to recover. It means that children who lost their limbs as a result of the hostilities will not be able to receive that treatment. So those are the very real implications of the government of Israel blocking humanitarian assistance from getting into Gaza. It's extremely alarming, and we are calling on all parties to abide by the agreement and for humanitarian assistance to once again be allowed in.
Yeah, if you could just assist me perhaps with some of the, I mean, what it looks like on the ground, right, as you try and bring aid into Gaza, just some of the logistical, I suppose, sort of nightmares that your team is facing in trying to bring that aid in.
Gaza is a very complex context, and we're talking about having to deal with roads that have been damaged as a result of the warfare. Having to need to stockpile aid to kind of deal with situations like this. We managed to get food, water, and hygiene kits into Gaza during the 6-week pause, but we still have materials such as shelter kits, tents, and other items that are waiting to get into Gaza. What our colleagues on the ground are telling us is that the prices of commodities have already started to rise. Our colleagues are afraid about the future. It's the first couple of days of Ramadan. Our colleagues had a lot of hope for the future, and when that hope has now been shattered because of the recent developments.
Yeah. Also, here's the reality: is that when you do have a blockade on humanitarian aid making its way to the most vulnerable, let's imagine that at some point that is lifted and then those trucks are able to flow in and reach the most vulnerable. You're then reaching people that have grown incredibly desperate, and what that looks like when aid does eventually reach them.
Well, and this is the thing, we need the flow of aid to be consistent because the second that people see that aid is being cut off, the situation gets even more desperate. So this is why we are calling for humanitarian assistance to be allowed in, for all restrictions to be lifted, for the crossing points to be opened once again, and to ensure that there continues to be safety for aid workers to deliver that assistance.
Yeah. Do you have a number of these, just how many children, Save the Children, for instance, is reaching? And so if they're unable to, if your team is unable to reach them, just how many children could possibly be or are impacted?
It's a good point, and it's not just Save the Children. Every single humanitarian organization in Gaza is in a similar situation. We were able to reach about several thousand children over the last 6 weeks But it's not just us, it's every single humanitarian organization, and almost every single person in Gaza is reliant on humanitarian assistance to survive. Very few commercial trucks managed to get into the Gaza Strip over the last 6 weeks. So people are reliant on that humanitarian assistance.
Meanwhile, you've got the Israeli foreign minister who is talking, when asked about, whether or not there is, the possibility of seeing the risk of starvation in Gaza, just blatantly saying that that is a lie.
Every day that aid is withheld, that risk becomes more real. This is why we need the resumption of commercial trucking to get more supplies into the markets. Already we're hearing that food and other essential items are becoming scarce in the markets, and this is why we need to see a scale up in the flow of goods entering Gaza immediately.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us, Alex, and we really will keep checking in, of course, to see, to get the latest. Alex Saieh, Head of Humanitarian Policy and Advocacy at Save the Children, speaking to us from Washington, D.C. This evening.